Let's go to New York City now. I mentioned Sky News business editor, speaking of business, Ross Greenwood. Has he been doing a fantastic job? He's on the ground in the city that never sleeps. Ross, great to see you again. I mean, you were there on election night. You were at a rooftop bar. You saw the results come out. You're in a very left-leaning city. How are the good folk in New York City reacting to the re-emergence of Donald Trump as their next president?
Yeah, look, really calmly, to be honest, Steve. And one of the fears I had coming here was if, say, Kamala Harris had won narrowly and it was contentious, that maybe the whole town would have really erupted and we'd have seen boarded up sort of stores and all the rest of that type of thing, protests. But no, it's incredibly calm. And so, you know, even being out today in Times Square and being around Rockefeller Center, all some of the noted areas of New York, it's really very much business as usual. So it's fair to say that Americans have taken this decision in their stride. And part of the reason for that is because it's so decisive. Because Donald Trump has won the popular vote, because he's won the Senate, because he's likely to win the Congress, and because he's obviously now the clear president of America, he's got a mandate. He's got a mandate for change in America. And when you go to that conservative side of politics and you go to the heartland of America, that's what people want. And that's kind of the message in some ways, I think, Steve, is that really the economic process that he's talking about is what Americans want. They want somebody to address their cost of living. They want somebody who's going to address the migration issue in America. They want somebody to address the future of America, to give them something to dream for, to aspire for. And that's kind of in many ways what Donald Trump was offering versus Kamala Harris and the Democrats. And so, you know, so from that point of view, as I say, while we might have been thinking at this time we'd have been covering protests, the reality is it's very, very calm on the streets. It's now just business as usual, and Americans, to be honest, are just getting on with it.
Well, you've been to New York many times. I mean, New York's not America. We see that now, don't we? You look at the map, and you look at that map after that election result, you've got a smudge of blue on the West Coast and a smudge of blue on the East Coast, and everything in the middle is red. I mean, I guess if you work and live in New York, even if you commute from some way out, you're not really too worried about the cost of living because you've probably got it covered.
Oh, it's so true, right? So the interesting thing is, even if you start to go to the upper Hudson around here to the north, you start to find that, you know, maybe you'll start to find some Republican areas. But the truth is, here in the heartland, it is dead set Democrat. But that said, Donald Trump even picked up a big swing here in New York. And the reason for that is migration. The number of migrants coming into New York City is really something that's alarmed Americans, not just here, but all over, where people have been dispersed. And therefore, it's a little like go back to the Howard years when, you know, Australia had people coming across the borders. Who voted, therefore, for, you know, sort of John Howard in those years? Who voted here for Donald Trump? It was migrants in many cases. You know, migrants who'd come here legitimately, who suddenly saw that really, you know, people coming without the visas, without the necessary certification, without the hoops they had jumped through, they suddenly said, hang on, is this actually fair? And so from that point of view, there is again a message for the Albanese government. And this is not just, you know, the reaction on the stock market, as Robert Carling's been talking about. It's also the reaction of Americans themselves to the higher cost of housing. The fact that in New York, the crime rates have risen here. And even though, to be honest, on the streets, we've pretty much been, you know, not noticed any of that. That has been the fact. Also, the fact that there have been an increase in hate crimes in America, you know, as a result of what's taken place in the Middle East. That's a real thing. So people have voted for all of these things. So, you know, one person who I really rate very highly, you know, when we've sat there and sort of talked to so many people over a long, long period of time, you know, is the New York Post columnist. So Miranda Devine was formerly with the Daily Telegraph, come here, written a couple of great books about Joe Biden and his son, Hunter Biden, and what she claims is corruption inside America. So, well, today I caught up with her in Times Square, and what she gives is the parallel between America and Australia, and what, in particular, Anthony Albanese has to learn before he goes to the next election. Otherwise, he could lose it. Have a listen. The mistakes of the Democrats over the past 4 years, do you see parallels with the Labor Party and mistakes it's making in the way it's judging the population in Australia?
Definitely. I think if for some reason Labor in Australia seems to take a lot of its talking points from the Democrats here, and they really should take a good look at the disaster the Democrats are here. It has not been a success. They're good at creating the narrative because they control the media. But in the end, it was a failure for them because they failed to see what was in front of them. And they are elitist, they are authoritarian.
Surely, Roscoe, I mean, Labor back here can't be that stupid that they're not going to look at what happened during this election campaign and say to themselves, well, it's got to be about the economy, it's got to be about the issue of immigration, it's got to be about working people not being able to afford to go to the supermarket and fill up their trolley anymore. I mean, they can't be that dumb that they're not going to take that warning, are they?
Okay, yeah, but then that's fine. But what are their answers? And that's the biggest issue. In other words, do you have an inquiry into supermarkets? Well, they're having one of those right now. Do you simply say, OK, let's just hand out some more money to the people? Well, the people see through that, right? And so my gut feel is the real answer is to show that you are pro-Australia, that you are really about aspiration, you know, trying to bring down the tax rates, because that's one thing Donald Trump's going to do. That makes Australia uncompetitive in the world with its very high tax rates. And so, you know, this is about trying to change the way in which government operates, because that's what Donald Trump also is going to do here, and really understand that give people, get out of people's way, give people a genuine go at setting up their business. Like here, they're not going to tax overtime, they're not going to tax tips, they're not going to tax people on social security. These are really important things for people to suddenly say, actually, I might do better out of that. I will go off, I'm prepared to work harder. In Australia, what do? We're now suddenly saying that the people who are driving Ubers, oh, now, hang on, you're part of the industrial relations system. We need to find out who you are and all that type of thing. So it's just like, get out of people's way, for goodness sakes. And I think that really, if anything, is a message for both political sides in Australia, that you come from this American election, that the people have really expressed in a very significant way, and that is, please, get out of our way, let us get on, and ultimately the government will be repaid by people working harder and ultimately paying more taxes.
Just one last one from me before you head back to Australia. Elon Musk, he's either the world's smartest bloke or luckiest bloke. Which one is it?
Look, given the fact he's the richest man in the world, right? And he's the man who's created SpaceX, and he's grabbed rockets out of the air, and he's now owns Twitter, or X as they call it, and he's also created Tesla. I'm going to go that, yes, he's maybe a bit wacky in some of his behaviour and all that sort of stuff. You've got to say he's the smartest bloke in the world. So he invests $120 million into Donald Trump after he's seen those images of Donald Trump after he'd been shot, and that was one of the iconic images of this election campaign. And suddenly, in the past 2 days, his net worth as Tesla shares have soared on the stock market here in America. His net wealth has increased by almost, and get this, $18.5 billion, with a B, billion dollars. So, you know, $120 million into 18 billion. Now, to be fair, that's paper money, so it doesn't mean really anything. It could go down next week. It could do all sorts of things. But, you know, you've got to sit there and say that the whole notion of bringing manufacturing into America, trying to actually get the whole notion of electric vehicles into America, and vehicles and houses electrified, all that sort of stuff, he's at the forefront of that. So not only will he advise Donald Trump on how to reduce the size of government here in America, you know, bringing in more than $2 trillion is what he's offering. The second thing is that he's going to make a whole bunch of money for himself, which he's already apparently starting to do.
Great work, Ross. You did a fantastic job during the election campaign and over the past week, and I'll see you when you get back.